My name is Grace Pye. I am the Executive Director of Asian Americans Advancing Justice Chicago and the Asian American Midwest Progressives, our sister organization. And our mission is to build power through collective advocacy and organizing to achieve racial equity. So just to start us off, as kind of opening remarks, we wanted to give you an opportunity just to share why you think you are the best candidate for Secretary of State.
All right, well, good evening and happy Diwali and early Saad Mubarak to all those that are celebrating. I hope my husband Riyadh and I send you blessings and peace and joy and happiness and light as you celebrate. I'm really happy to be here because I think it's so important that we all have a voice in this process and are civically engaged in our community, and that's really why I spent my career. So let me just start out on why I chose public service. So a lot of you know me as Chicago City Clerk, as the second woman and second Latina to ever serve as City Clerk. But I actually grew up in Granite City. So I'm born and raised in the Metro East, what people call Southern Illinois, a 30,000 person town. My dad is a union painter. He's been a painter for 37 years. My mom worked at a nonprofit, just making $25,000 a year, working with alternative high school students and middle school students. And she actually lost her job at age 60 due to the Rauner budget crisis. My teacher and mentor, who's now campaign co-chair, and my parents saw something in me and encouraged me to apply to college. I got to University of Illinois on a scholarship and was first in my family to graduate college. This is my why, to help people like my family. It's exactly why what government has done for me by opening doors and opportunities for my family and I to be running and even being here to run for Secretary of State. We don't start out in the same place when we start out in life, and I really believe that government can be that great equalizer. So 5 years ago, something else changed. 2016 happened, and two things happened. Susana Mendoza won statewide as our first Latina statewide elected. By the way, there's only 4 in the country, 4 Latina statewide elected. I would be number 5. And Hillary Clinton lost. And for so long in my career, I've worked for Senator Durbin. I managed his campaign in 2014 in Illinois Democratic Coordinated. I worked in Springfield with the Senate Democrats. I worked for a lot of people behind the scenes. But in 2016, I felt that we were called to do more, especially women and women of color. We had to raise our hand and serve and be there to stand up to that guy in the White House. So 5 days after Donald Trump was sworn in, I was sworn in and we got to work. And we created progressive policies with community, bottom up, not top down, and created the very first ever municipal ID card, the City Key. It's a government ID, library card, CTA transit card, a prescription discount card, and it's free. We've printed them in communities within 10 minutes. We've printed them during the pandemic on the front lines for the homeless shelter so that people could use them to get access to temporary housing. Before COVID, we were printing them at Cook County Jail for women who were leaving Cook County Jail so they had the dignity of identification and could access city services they need to get back on their feet. We stood up for fines and fees reform in Chicago. I met a CTA bus driver 3 years ago who had a family of 5 in North Lawndale, who had $5,000 in city sticker ticket debt. So in Chicago, if you do not get your city sticker, which you register your car in the city clerk's office, it's $200 a ticket per day. So the city told him he had to put half down to get on a payment plan. When he didn't have it, they suspended his driver's license, he lost his job, and he lost his ability to provide for his family. Wrong. That's not why we care, that's not why we serve. So I stood with these families, and we worked with Secretary White, the governor, we worked at the General Assembly, and they passed a law that no longer suspends driver's license for non-moving violations. And people were able to get their driver's license. In fact, 55,000 residents in Chicago got their driver's license and got back their ability to work. We've stood up next gen city council for young people in our civics classes in high schools around the city of Chicago to be mayor for the day, city council members for the day, debating different ordinances, knowing that they have a voice and are empowered to do so. We created a women and girls working group to talk about gender equity, and now we're modernizing city council, going completely paperless next year, and the first time in Chicago history, aldermen will be voting electronically. Transparency in government. This is what we've done in 4 years. Imagine what we can do as Secretary of State. That is why I'm running. Because we have a record of results, we're doers, we're bridge builders, and I have spent my life doing this work. I spent 18 years of my life in Granite City in Southern Illinois. I spent 4 years of my life in Champaign, Urbana. I spent the last 11 years here in Chicago representing the city of Chicago and a little short stint in Springfield for 2 years. I know the state, and I know what voters are looking for, and that's what we want to provide at the Secretary of State's office.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I'll give you, more time to talk about some of these different specific issues. As you know, all of the organizations that have made this forum possible tonight represent and serve marginalized communities. Just as a refresher, those organizations are the Indo-American Democratic Organization, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Asian American Midwest Progressives, Vote Assyrian, the Illinois Muslim Civic Coalition, Activate, and Common Cause Illinois, the Young Democrats of Illinois, and Women's March Chicago. So how will you ensure that the Secretary of State's office, the services, and your team will represent and serve our communities by hiring diverse staff and utilizing our expertise and counsel as representatives of those marginalized communities?
Well, I think you have to not only walk the walk, you have to talk, not only talk the talk, you have to walk the walk. And I'm always a person of action. I don't look at what people tell me, but really action. And I'm a person who shows up for community when asked. When asked Women's March, the very first march, and I see people in here from that very first march, I'm looking at you, Jackie and Deborah, and Delar, and all of us, when we showed up, we were all together. Didn't matter what your background, we were fighting against that White House that were oppressing our rights and our voice. And I met someone here tonight who we were talking about, we ran into each other at the airport after the Muslim ban. And we were at the airport, and I know that seems like decades ago, but that was the beauty of standing. When people called upon me, I showed up. I didn't run, I showed up towards the fight, hand in hand to whether it was Bruce Rauner or Donald Trump, because we had a very brutal 8 years here in Illinois. The sun is coming. Kamala Harris is in the White House, so we can celebrate. I was a delegate. I was go Kamala very early. But for me, it's all about making sure that equity is the first lens of everything we do in the Secretary of State's office. From who is at the table implementing and creating the policies has to represent all of Illinois, to who's implementing it. And it goes back to bottom up, not top down. So 3 principles we're running on is equity, access, and innovation. In terms of access, we have to look at voting access. Although we are a blue state, we are surrounded by red. So we are a blue island to so many. So we have to make sure we're protecting that right. So on day 1, I want to create an Illinois Voting Access Commission where we bring on the Illinois Board of Elections, we bring community-based organizations, universities, the state legislature, all the communities you just named, to the table, break down the silos. Government loves to work in silos. Break down the silos, use scarce resources in different departments to look at doubling down on vote by mail, making sure automatic voter registration is fully implemented, looking at things like blockchain in terms of data security and voting security. We also want to create a paid youth jobs program called the Civics Corps. We want to have these youth be able to sign up and register voters in their community. We want to make sure that they know how to be civically engaged, they know they have a voice, and they see themselves in public service. Because when I was coming up, I couldn't afford to take an unpaid internship. And then you miss out on that getting your foot in the door. So we need to make sure that regardless of what zip code you have, that you have a paid internship to get civically engaged. In terms of innovation and access, we want to talk about the DMV. So we know there are lines. We've heard across the state that there are lines. The pandemic has shown us the gap in technology infrastructure, even at my own office, at the city clerk's office. So we're playing catch up. So we need to look at things like a mobile app, where we overhaul our technology infrastructure and have a mobile app where you can take your vision test online, pay online, use an e-signature, DocuSign, upload documents, where you don't even have to step into an office if you don't need to. So you don't have to find childcare or transportation or take a day off of work to get the services you need. But we also know that there's still a digital divide in many of our communities. So we need mobile services. And Secretary White has done an amazing job leading the way on mobile services. And we actually got this idea from him. We started a mobile city hall in Chicago. We were in the South Shore Park area where on a Saturday you could walk in and get not only a city key and a municipal ID card, you could pay a water bill, you could get your city sticker. Treasurer Frericks was there with a pop-up for iCash. So that people were meeting people where they are in their neighborhoods, not reverse. and offering evening hours or Saturday hours so that they don't have to take that time off of work. And so that's what we need to do when we re-envision about how services work in the Secretary of State's office and beyond. And then lastly, a lot of people don't know, but the Secretary of State is the chief librarian. And when I grew up in Granite City, every free program there was at the library, my mom took us to. And so we also know, though, based on your zip code, that the libraries are not equitable. A lot of times it's based on property taxes. So we want to take the grants existing there and we want to increase them to look at technology grants to fill those gaps so that every library can have a maker's lab, like Rockford, where you have 3D printing and entrepreneurs can come in and test their products for free at the library. And we need to use it as expansion to broadband access. There's money there in a federal bill, looking at federal and state dollars to expand broadband access at the libraries that are community hubs. Because in McLean County in central Illinois, I heard from families in rural communities who drove to their library, even though it was closed, sat in the parking lot, got their kids' e-materials downloaded so that they could do their homework. And then I heard in Chicago families who kept the libraries open, that was a safe space for them to go with their laptops and digital to plug into school. So that is a serious thing that we need to look at, the digital divide, and how do we make sure that our families are set up for success to plug into the 21st century. So those are just a few ideas.
Great, thank you. So what do you see as the biggest obstacles to winning this race, and what is your plan to overcome those obstacles?
Well, we're gonna win this race. I think that voters are ready for someone who has their shared lived experience. They're looking for someone that understands, that knows what it's like to have a father not work for 2 years because of a recession, to understand what it's like to have student loan debt, to live paycheck to paycheck at times, to be a person of color where we're growing a population but our political representation is still less than 1%. Where my daughter can see that women belong in executive office, that we need representation and lived experiences across the room so that we can make informed decisions for our community. And that's what I'm hearing across Illinois. And that's what I'm excited about this race. Senator Tammy Duckworth has endorsed us, Congresswoman Underwood, all amazing women that are next generation leaders. We've had the Latino Victory Fund, a national organization, endorse us to make this a national race because, again, there are only 4 Latinas that are statewide electeds. And although we are growing the population, we are still less than 1% in political representation. That's wrong. And let me talk about money, because that seems to be a lot of topic. We talk about who has the most money, has the most merit. When did that happen? When did that happen? When did we stop talking about issues and what voters care about? And also who can be in competitive primary? And I think it says a lot who showed up tonight, who showed up and who didn't. I think people need to know that. And so for me, I'm running for people, again, like my parents. I'm running to make sure that we have political representation and making sure that there's a voice for people like my daughter coming into office.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think the question, though, specifically was about obstacles, and you named, lack of current representation and money. So do you see those as obstacles for your campaign specifically?
No, I feel really good about our donations, our grassroots organization, the momentum we're putting together in the state. I think we have a great record of results to run on and things that we've accomplished in the last 4 years. I think we've got a great story and can really connect with voters. And yes, I do think that looking at presidential race, when we saw Kamala Harris, and I'm so excited for her to run and see her take that next step. And we were as a part of her Illinois leadership team. And when she called and told us she wasn't running again, I was like, well, if you can't do it, you're the largest, and money was the issue. And that was when Michael Bloomberg, I think, got in and had a bunch of money and was scaring some people. And she said, don't give up. Because I was like, if you can't do it, then what does it say for any other women of color who want to run? She's like, do not give up. She's like, every time that I was out and I saw young girls who just saw you doing what you're doing, so just by being able to run and let other young girls see you is already winning. And so even though I was trying to console her, she was consoling us as she did not step up, but now she's the vice president and breaking another barrier. So I feel that politics are changing, and I think the voters are looking for that too.
Yeah, could you just name maybe one obstacle that you think you are facing right now?
I just named that. I do not know. Ooh. I don't know. I feel like there are a lot of challenges for women running for office. I feel like we always have to prove ourselves 4 times, 5 times than a man. I think there's still a gap in equity in fundraising. I talked to Congresswoman Underwood in 2018 when she ran the first time. There was a gap of about $500,000 between what she raised and correctional rates were next to her. So yes, there are barriers for women entering in this race. There's still misogyny, there's still things that you face in even interviews. But I don't want that to discourage any woman watching this. I want them to use that as a tool to fuel you to keep going. Because if you allow that to push you out, we'll never seek to break any barriers.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing that. And you talked about this a little bit already, but can you just share a little bit more about the support that you have so far and what your path is to victory?
Yeah, so we have some amazing leaders. I mentioned Senator Duckworth, Congressman Lord Underwood, also Latino Victory Fund, the painters, bricklayers, United Here Local 1, which is an amazing organization that I'm really proud to stand with. Most of their members are women of color, and they have fought really hard to get back their jobs during this pandemic. They actually had to do a rehire ordinance that we worked on with them to be able to get their jobs back, because I was meeting women who had worked there 18, 25 years, were not brought back when the hotel started being rebooked because they wouldn't be retrained. And that is something we have to fight against. I don't care where you are as a woman, what leadership role you may carry, we all have a responsibility to fight for each other. Also, we have the firefighters just endorsed us as well, and a slew of other local elected officials around the state, and a lot of women. It's been exciting to see women run for Board of Trustees and Library Board and County Board and mayors, and I think that's going to be one of our powerful tools that we can use to win this race.
Great, so we have just about 1 minute left. So is there anything else that you would like this audience to know that we haven't covered already?
So when I'm looking at this race, people are asking what distinguishes you from the crowd. I think having the unique experience of growing up in Southern Illinois, living in Central Illinois, and representing Chicago, you see a vast majority of different opinions and perspectives that help you get better at your career. I also think being able to really listen to community, all these ideas that I mentioned that I've done in the city clerk's office were ideas that were brought to me. I just executed it. I was just able to implement it. I think that's what we should be doing as public servants, is listening to the community, bringing us the problems, and we help find the solutions that they need. So I'm very excited about this race. I would love the support in this room to help us break that history, make that history as the first Latina, mom, and millennial Secretary of State. Thank you.
Thank you so much.